Hi there all, thanks for joining us this morning. So thank you for joining us. Today's session, we're joined by Kevin Green, one of our technical directors. I'll be looking at how our organizations can reduce enterprise risk, protect themselves from downtime and service losses, as well as running through strategies for protecting your data and how to balance impact versus budget and the silver bullet from recovering from ransomware attacks. Feel free to ask us questions in the chat box, but before we start, here's a bit about us. PowerON is broken down into three services types: managed services, professional services, and support services. With our headcount increasing, there's now more than 50 of us. We manage 20,000 devices on our managed services platforms, as well as providing our services across the globe. We are Microsoft Elite partners, assisting and working alongside the teams at Microsoft on both existing and new solutions, as well as both gold and silver partners in this space. We work with a variety of clients across both the public and private sectors, such as Pret, Body Shop, University of Cambridge, and more. So in today's agenda, we'll be going through current scenarios, protect, detect, respond, minimizing downtime and protecting data, and best practice strategies for backup and recovery. So the current scenario, more than 3/4 of IT security professionals believe they are at high risk of attack. Those same teams don't feel prepared to deal with a breach or indeed recover from it effectively. Whilst the financial impact of ransomware itself can be huge, the biggest concern for organizations right now is data and downtime, and all with a good reason. The average downtime after a ransomware attack for the first quarter of 2021 was 23 days, almost a month without access to potential internet, documents, and services required to keep your organizations running. The financial impact of an unexpected closure for even a day can be enormous, so it's fair to say that the idea of a month's unproductivity loss can be pretty scary. So why are we in this situation? The majority of vulnerabilities exploited by attackers already had patches and updates released. It's no surprise that it's hard to keep up, and it feels like every other day new vulnerabilities are exposed. Meanwhile, the number of users working from devices is higher than ever, and user behavior is one of the biggest risk factors from a security point of view. Security strategy can become complex, and with limited budget and resources, teams are under more pressure than ever. And adding into the mix a thriving organized ransomware industry that funds increasingly sophisticated attacks, and it's easy to see how the situation has become about. It's more important than ever to have a holistic security strategy in place to mitigate against ransomware. So, creating a strategic approach for reducing long-term risk, the concept is simple. Create a holistic defense strategy that can allow organizations to protect against attacks, detect vulnerabilities and threats, and respond immediately to reduce downtime and impact if the worst happens. Many organizations invest heavily in both protection and detection tools. However, we feel being able to respond is one of the highest urgencies. This is to ensure there is minimal business impact, including data loss and financial impact to organizations, to then being able to understand your risks and close security holes. So moving on to security risks and reducing them for short-term risks. The difficulty lies in the application. The lengthy process of shoring up defenses and implementing robust security can leave organizations open to attack and put strain on resources, time, and budget. Can mean businesses can have to try and prioritize rather than work strategically. There's a way to reduce risk in the short term, though. Priority needs to be reducing immediate risk of data loss and downtime first. The best way to do this is by reversing the focus and building backwards. So starting with a robust response plan. And so I'll be handing over to Kev. Oh, Kev, I think you're on mute.
Oh, here we go. That's the first one for the technical test. So morning, everybody, and welcome to the the seminar today, the WebEx. Basically, my name's Kevin Green. I've worked in the storage and data protection and recovery market for over 30 years. I would say this last 3 years has not been exciting, but it's been interesting. The actual rise in ransomware attacks has basically increased tenfold that I've been personally working on over the last 2-3 years. And as Ricky's just said, the actual best way of defending on it is actually a multi-layered approach. We can't just basically say anymore, there's one fix. There's actually multi-layers. We've got front end, middle, and we've got the back end. So what we're going to be talking about today is actually using technology to protect the data. But more importantly, depending on what that data is, what the application is, what the business need is, how fast can we get it back? Do we need it back in an hour? Do we need it back in 2 days? It's just understanding that technology that will best help. So, okay, let's get started with these slides. Okay, so what is a cyber attack? Basically, it's been around for a long time. If you remember, well, you might not remember, 1990, there was an email came out that basically said, Merry Christmas, and you click on that and it basically wiped your hard drive. That was sort of the early days where people were just trying to basically cause problems. We have gone way past that time now, where we're on about financial loss. It's all about ransom. I think it was 68% so far in 2021 of ransomware attacks have been about extorting money. Okay, we've got operational outages, we've got loyalty impact, but at the end of the day, the people who are causing these attacks are wanting predominantly money, unless it's more of a asserted attack that is against your business, a competitive, basically, we're talking obviously outside of the country attack, talking, what's the word? Oh, crikey.
Nation state.
Yeah, we're talking state-based attacks. We're not talking about criminal organizations now. They've grown. They've actually grown into the actual crime units now are attacking personally for 99% of the money, where a state-based attack could be, literally, we just want to cause you some problems. So it's not just about brand reputation, brand shaming, stealing personal information, all of those kind of things. It's actually about predominantly money. Personally, in the last 7 months, I've worked on at least 6 recovery processes, and every one of those who have been attacked, it's all about actually, do we pay? When do we pay? Or do we have a system that allows us to get back? It doesn't matter where you look at it, you're either being attacked, you've been attacked, or you're about to be attacked. It's inevitable that it's going to happen. It's how you are prepare yourself, understanding the business and moving forward to do that recovery. Okay, most organizations do have a DR plan. Now, I remember the term RTO and RPO, restore time objective and restore point objective, probably about 20 years ago. And back then, I don't really think it got the credibility that it deserved. Because back then we were talking, and you can probably laugh, but first time I ever to do backups was on 1.44 inch floppy drives. Some of the guys haven't even heard of them. But then it went to different types of tapes, different types of media. We're now working in environments where systems need to be back quickly. But also we need to make sure we've got more copies. So that DR plan can't just be based on, we've got 1 copy of the data and it comes back when it comes back. It has to be more adaptive, it has to be faster, it has to be easy to use, easy to manage. It is an insurance policy, but it's only as good as the provider you choose. You have to look at what you're getting. Does it deliver? And more importantly, have you tested it? Have you done your reviews and everything else? Because when this happens, this DR requirement happens, it may be a once in a lifetime event. It might be that you're unlucky and it happens more than once. But we need to make sure that you can recover the data. So ransomware protection, we call it ransomware because that's the biggest thing out there. But there are ways of mitigating against it, which is what we're going to discuss. Some of them are less costly than others, but it all is down to how fast you need that data back, what systems you need back, and what your business is. I know people who have been hit and they've gone back into paper form while they're doing their recoveries. They are lucky in that they can do that. Some people can't. They need online systems back within an hour or 24 hours. And that's what we need to understand, and you need to understand as customers, which you understand better than anybody. So working with us, we work with you to understand your needs to then move forward. So the reality, I remember about 25 years ago, 30 years ago, we were talking about, floods, fires, natural disasters. It was on every PowerPoint slide on the planet. This is what's most likely going to happen with a DR event. It's going to be based on flood, fire, and natural. Well, realistically, in 30 years, I've heard of one data center being flooded. And that was because it was very badly situated underground, and there was actually a rain duct outside the middle of the roof. And they came in one day and it was underwater by 4 feet. And yes, we've had more of those floods lately. We had them in Holland, in Benelux, where we had lots of flooding going on. But the chance of that happening compared to a ransomware attack or a cyber attack is minimal. And the thing of that is that only affects that local location, where a ransom and cyber attack can affect the local location, the remote location. If you're not locked down and you don't have the correct policies and procedures in place, it could affect predominantly most of the data. We've got ways around that, which we're going to discuss as well. So one of the biggest questions I've always asked customers is, right, okay, first of all, do you have a DR plan or a run book or something that indicates what systems you need? And more importantly, how quickly can we get them back? If some people say, we've got a 24-hour window, okay, we can deploy the technology and make sure you know how to use it, and with our help, recover your systems in less than that window. Because it's not just about recovering that system, it's about making sure that the system we recover isn't actually, hasn't been compromised as well. One thing we don't want to do is obviously recover something from 2 days ago, and we recover the 9th system, and the 9th system we recover was compromised, and we start all again. So we need to make sure that whatever we recover is safe. Nothing's going to be guaranteed 100%, but having those procedures and technology in place will mean we've actually got an option. So having disparate sites, so we're always going to have a main priority site, then we're going to have secondary sites, third sites. I know people who are paranoid as I am. They've got 4 copies, 3, 2, 1, and 1, 1. So it depends on your background. I am a paranoid as a person. I have 2 dishwashers, I have 2 tumble dryers, 2 washing machines, 2 hoovers. It's just the way I think. But it is important to understand having a primary backup is good. But if that's the only copy you've got in this day and age, where is that primary backup stored? On a server, on an appliance, or something with disk, with an operating system. It has got an attack profile. So yes, we use that for day-to-day recovery or normal recovery. But if the worst happens, we need to make sure that if that is compromised, which it could be, we've got secondary copies, third copies, on a second location, connected via secure port replication. We've got it in the cloud. Exactly. All of this needs to be considered. But also what needs to be considered, and is key, and I found it's massively key over the years, is some technology out there can store the data. Great. We've got it off-site. We've got it in a remote location. Question is, how fast can that come back? Because if we can only pull down a couple of terabytes in a day, and we've got 200 terabytes to pull down, we've got a problem. It's been designed incorrectly based on your recovery. So immutable is what's changed it. Immutable has been around a long time when you think about it, because it's something that once it's written to, the data can't be changed. It's locked. So old school, tape. A lot of people, we write to tape, we store it as long as we store it somewhere safely. It should not be compromised by something that hits the core system. But now we have mutable backup appliances and repositories. And that's what's changed in the marketplace, in that literally if the primary unit does get hit, the actual immutable copy, as we'll go through later, is safe. It cannot be penetrated. So it just makes it all different. At PowerON, we do use a single technology to actually bring all this together, which we'll go to shortly. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, what motivates a cyber attacker? Well, what motivates any criminal organization? Doesn't matter what it is. Money. Breaking into your system to get something that they can actually then make money on. It's as simple as that. They're criminals. It doesn't matter if we call them cyber attackers or whatever, ransomware. They are criminals. They're out there to make money, to make your job harder, to make your company pay up if you don't have the right systems in place. Everything's just moved on. Okay, 1990, as I mentioned, the good old email that came out, and if you clicked on it, it just said, have a good day. And yeah, your day went down the can quite quickly because it deleted your hard drive. 2000, we started getting worms and DDoS attacks. And obviously the worms spread through the systems, bringing other malware and everything else into the boxes. DDoSs are less of a thing I hear today, but they're still out there. I actually, back in the 2000s, I was involved in actually being on site doing some work when a couple came in. It's horrible. It was a horrible time. But these were just more of attacks. Then we came in 2008 onwards with evasive code. So where the worms were more of, I'm going to have a go, I'm going to have a look around, I'm going to go lateral, I'm going to see what I can do, I'm going to see what I can get to, what I can infect. Evasive code, if you think about it, is more like a ninja. It sits there in the shadows, waiting, prodding, trying. Ooh, I'm going to keep quiet because something's around. They're very intelligent pieces of code that get around the system and cause problems. So it's just got cleverer and cleverer. Encryption-based attacks. This is when it all started to change, when information was being encrypted, and literally you get a warning on the screen that if you wanted your, in fact, the one I was working on last week just said, pay or pray, which was funny to a point, but not funny to the environment that it had actually hurt. So encryption-based attacks and ransomware is all about encrypting data, data leakage, pulling out personal information, shaming if you don't pay the ransom, and so on. It's a combination of a lot of things. But the key thing is, guys, remember, these guys are criminals. They want money. They don't want a pat on the back. They don't want to shake a hand. They want money. And then now we've got data exfiltration attacks. It's all about, again, even more now, pulling information out, passing it on the internet. We see all the days in the news every day or every other week now, somebody's been attacked. 2,500 records have been released, 2 million records have been released. I know that once there was one of the companies I'm with that got released. First thing I did, what you should do, straight online, change your passwords, make them complicated, and change your MFA, your multi-form factor authentication. Make it as hard as possible. I joke about passwords sometimes to my wife, but she gets really annoyed because some of my passwords are very complicated. So they're written down. That's not a bad thing. Writing passwords down exterior to the present your security system is not a good. It's not a bad idea. I've had customers say to me, "We've been attacked. We want to do a recovery," and I go, "Okay, cool. Let's get on with it. We can do the recovery from the second or the third copy, and we just need the password." You've not got the password. Why not? Because that is actually stored in the vault, and the vault was completely encrypted. So having a second copy of those passwords somewhere else is as key to having a second copy of your data. So you have to think one step ahead, guys. And how it happens. Phishing and RDP attacks. Everybody hates RDP, that port that everybody blocks. But it's out there, reconnaissance. Every day, if I looked at my Cisco full-blown, my firewall, and I look at the attacks I'm getting every day, I get between about 500 and 1,500 rejects on somebody trying to either do reconnaissance or get into the system. And it's even worse once you've got a static IP address and it gets known that it's real or whatever, people will keep at it. So here the reconnaissance comes in with phishing, emails, looking for vulnerabilities, and so on. Then we get lateral movement. We're looking into the environment. We're trying to get credentials. We're also trying to work out what the systems are, what's connected to the system. What I find a little bit scary these days is these attackers are actually going one step ahead. They're actually looking for the backup devices first, because if they can compromise that quietly, then they can move forward through the system and start attacking your main systems. By the time you realize you've been attacked on the main systems, then your backups may be also compromised, which is why having multiple levels of backups is critical. You won't know until it actually comes to it. And this is actually becoming quite common. The actual attackers now are extremely aware. So even silly things like naming the data protection environment or servers meaningful. I had a customer not long ago say, right, okay, we're building our backup environment. Said recommendation for server names. They came forward with a few. I said, well, I wouldn't put in there what they are. So in the end, they called them, it was interesting, the backup server was called Sausage. It basically wouldn't mean anything to anybody because they're basically using a naming convention that wasn't actually typical. Little things can make a big difference. Once we're actually in, they start actually doing discovery tools, again, identifying backup systems. I found that the biggest scary thing in the last few months, that when I've talked to organizations and law enforcement organizations, that literally they are looking for these type of backup systems first. Now that's fine as long as you've got your multi-tiered backup system, which is what we're going to talk about. Because at the end of the day, there is no silver bullet. You are not going to get full protection on maybe the primary, but it's how you recover from that if it does get infected. So this is where the multi-layer comes in. So after that, they'll basically just continue and release and cause you impact. It's as simple as that. They've compromised you. They've left you a nice little note, pay or pray. I found it quite funny, but it's not at all. And instructions. And actually, I've noticed that the instructions are getting better. They're actually getting more intelligent in the way that they're demanding money. It's all Bitcoin, it's all cryptocurrency now, so harder to trace and everything else. So the backup platform, the server platform you want to protect is basically down to two things. One, we need to monitor it to make sure we're protecting it, making sure the backups are running, making sure they're recoverable, automated testing, but we need to also activate endpoint security on the backups. So many backup systems don't have endpoint security on them with ransomware protection and so on. That gives you at least a very comfortable level of feeling that actually your backups are as secure as they're going to be on a live environment. But then we come into the air gaps. So the copies of the backups, the 321, which we'll go through. And then there's additional protection layers. Any system today would probably most likely, if you invest into it, will have MFA, multiple form factor authentication, and the immutable side. But we need to just make it as hard as possible for people to get to that data. You've got systems to protect the front end stuff, and you've got perimeter networking, you've got in-place networking, you've got all the stuff that Ricky and the guys are really, really good at and they're up on. But then we've got to look at this, if it does get through, what happens if? I know the word if is one of those words that can be how long is a piece of string, but it's if they get through, and more likely when they get through. So we need to know how we get back. So let's make it as hard as possible for them and not make it easy. Okay, focusing on the backup and recovery infrastructure now. Cyber attends to active managed to date. At the end of the day, let's just bring this slide up. This is the front end, first line of defense. You all know this. You all know what's involved, firewalls, email filtering. All of those things will make it harder for them to get in. But saying that, I think 80% of the environments I've worked on in the last 2 years, the biggest one, guess how they get in again? I don't need to tell you, but email. It's still an email that somehow gets in and somebody clicks on and something kicks off. It's always that, it's 80% of the time I found it's that way. They've admitted it got in that way into the business. My area of working or within the business is actually last line of defense, the data backups and the recovery. Now to do that, I'd need to understand things like SLAs. What is the business SLAs? What are the tier 1 servers? What needs to be back within, let's say, an hour? Tier 2, what needs to be back within, I don't know, 8 hours? After that, we tier the servers in such a way that your business is up and running and less impact as soon as possible. But obviously you still need all the systems back. But there's a key point there, what I said earlier. No point bringing a server back within an hour if it's infected or you're not sure. So the actual backup technology needs technology in itself to be able to bring that, basically that recovery point or that point in time into a closed environment that then can be scanned to prove that it's actually safe to come back. Because the last thing we want to do is, like I say, spend half a day bringing a load of things back, and then we have this little person lurking on server number 9, which infects the whole environment again. So again, we need to understand your RPOs and RTOs 20 years ago, I found those 3 little letters quite entertaining, but now they're critical. You do need to know your data loss and your time to recover, how much you can afford. And also 5-6 years ago, the costs associated with bringing RPO and RTO together increased massively. As you got closer to the beginning, to like 0 or minutes, those costs went up, it was magnified massively. That's not the case anymore. The systems that are out there today and the systems that we specialize in within PowerON and our partner, we actually, all that's built in. So there's no more of how much do I need to spend on this extra feature? How much was this going to cost? It's already built into the system. Just need to make sure that everybody today uses that technology correctly with the support and assistance of the partner like ourselves who can help you go through that minefield and get it all working, keep it working, take the pain away from you. So multiple backup copies, on-site, off-site, cloud, tape, all of it. We're going to talk about that. Limit access to the backup structure. Out the domain. How many backup infrastructures do you know that are still on the domain with loads of admin credentials or accounts? Or I saw one not long ago where I logged onto the server and I went into the actual Drive Explorer and I saw literally the main drives for the backup data and I saw 15 shares. I asked what the shares were and they went, oh, it's just part of the GPO it's in. Well, that's opening the box up. So off the domain, it doesn't make any difference to the backup technology that we use. We can back up anything off the domain, in the domain, cloud, by using the same box. So you don't need to place the machine in the domain anymore. And also then use different media. Primarily, the primary media will be disk-based because of speed and convenience. But then we're going to move it to different ones. And we'll talk about them. So we have a principle called 321, which we're going to go through in a second. Just to recap, we need protecting it with active endpoint security. We need to basically turn on any layers of protection we can. MFA, out the domain, any feature we've got, turn it on. We need to make it harder for these criminals to get into your system and cause you havoc. We're all in IT. That's the main reason we're on this call. We've all been around the block. We all know how awkward or hard it is when something happens. It could just be a server crash, server loss, something's gone wrong, you've had whatever, a hypervisor host has gone offline, you've actually been hit by a virus or ransomware. We don't need the grief. Being in IT is exciting and challenging, but the less grief we get, the better. Okay, complete ransomware strategy really is a multi-model. Again, no silver bullets. If somebody says to me one day, this is all you need, I might nod because I don't want to be impolite or rude, but at the end of the day, there is no silver bullet. There is no one chance or one implementation. So we have to start with security, implementing the whole security, identity management, MFA, privileged access management, and think about all of that front end stuff to stop it getting in. Then we have to have secure backups, disaster recovery. That's sort of a different area of technology that we cover within this presentation, because initially we're talking about backups, but DR is critical. Disaster recovery is not necessarily bringing a file back, it's actually bringing an environment back as fast as possible with little impact, and also the testing in that environment by using the same software, which is under the same name, same interface that you're currently using to do your backups. And then we implement, you see down the bottom now, we have a 3-2-1-1 strategy. I'll explain that in a second. And really that -1, the final one, is the immutable. It's giving you that last, ultra last line of defense, no chance that that criminal is going to get in there. You can recover that data. And then finally, the processes. Yep, update employee training, we all know about that. Don't click on anything you shouldn't do. I spend most of my time in the middle one here. Recovery exercises, making sure that on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly, we go through all the processes to make sure we can get the data back. Even if a customer just says, all I'm bothered about is the key tier 1 servers. Those 14 servers I need back within 4 hours to run the business. The rest of them, as long as we know they're recoverable, we can get them back in 24, 48 hours. We're not bothered. But it's understanding what those servers are and making sure we test it, constantly test it. Now that can be automated. So you don't have to sit there and try and justify you booking out a day a week, a day a month at your diary. That can be automated. So you can be 99.9% sure it will come back. And then obviously now, a big thing in all backup software, any kind of access to management consoles and anything else is multi-factor authentication. So that is a standard prereq now. Okay, I won't say the old rule, the base rule, 3-2-1. Create 3 types of data, 1 primary, 2 backups. So we've got 3 types of data itself, and keep 2 of them at least on different storage media. So in this case, we're going to probably back up our first one to the primary backup appliance. Then if we have another appliance in the environment that's also doing backups, let's say on another site, that one will then cross-replicate. So then we've got 2 copies. And then the third copy would go off to cloud, to tape, to immutable, or whatever you decide is your preferred method based on a lot of things. It could be cost, could be location, could be lots of things. But we also, like I said, and then store them off-site. This is where the rule changes. Meet 3-2-1-1. This is pure offline or immutable. Now, in some cases, it doesn't always have to be 3-2-1-1. We can bring this one forward to this position. So it's 3-2-1. All depends on the needs and what your actual setup looks like against what you require. This one is the real last line of defense. And again, the word immutable has been around for a long time. We can get immutable storage in the cloud. We can get immutable storage on a tape. Once it's written, as long as you don't go and stick it in a microwave, it's safe. But this day and age, we don't need that delay in recovering it. The only way we can recover data fast in case of an attack from an immutable device would be if it's a purpose-built unit, which allows you to basically take constant snapshots and recover from any one of those. And what I mean by that is this. Simultaneous multi-use also means we can back up to that device, we can replicate to it, but every 90 seconds a snapshot occurs. The only the only live data that's accessible or could be corrupted is the 90 seconds before a snapshot occurs. After that, we have 90 second snapshots, so 14 an hour, 1 a day up to 1 a day, so an hourly, 24 hours, and then basically dailies. This can all be fine-tuned. Most people will go for this one, 4 weeks. Some will go for a year, depending on what the system is. What I mean by here is we're actually backing up to the primary system. We're then replicating somewhere else. We're then writing to this immutable location, this device. Every 90 seconds, a snapshot occurs. If at the end of the week, you decide, well, I want to test my recoverability, fine. Simultaneous use means we can actually take a snapshot of any one of these and mount them as a read or read-write copy, and we can allow it back to the backup software. And it can be mounted and you can see the backups in there, you can test them, you can verify them, but you cannot change them. So once you dismount it, it's still read-only, it is immutable, it is not attackable. So immutable storage is changing the way things happen, especially where ransomware has changed the world. Immutable is needed to give that last line of defense in case something attacks the environment. And as you can see, we can go back as far as you want. Some people would say, well, after a month, the data would be pretty useless for me. So that all depends on your RTO and RPO within your company, but it's extendable. The backups within the backup system, tier 1, how many people still back up every day, once a day at 10 o'clock, 8 o'clock? That's great, but up to 23 hours, 59 minutes data loss. Tier 1 systems, back them up every 30 minutes, every hour. Be able to go back in the day 12 times 15 minutes and then go to dailies for 30 days. I don't need weeklies because I've just done 30 dailies. So you can absolutely tune the system based on the recoverability and the data loss you require per individual node if necessary. And this includes Office 365, hypervisors, VMware, Hyper-V, all the hypervisors out there, Windows-based, Linux-based. It's all covered within a single solution. So we don't need to go and implement different things. It can all be controlled from one environment. So what are we talking about? what we're talking about is protecting IT and the business from ransomware by using ArcServe UDP. This is the core technology we use within PowerON. It's unified data protection. It is secured. So what I said earlier about protecting the endpoint, this appliance, we need it protected. Yes, the backups are on there, but we need to make sure that absolutely we've locked it down so tight that the chance of that system being actually compromised, if your main environment's compromised, is so slim that your first chance of recoverability will be from here, because it's absolutely locked down, secure, valid, and you've got your data. Yes, somebody said to me last week, yeah, but what if my data's, when you backed it up, it's corrupt? Well, that's the whole point of testing. So from the box, we will go to the interface, we will very quickly just right click on the node you want to bring back, let's say from 5 days ago, we'll boot it in a sandpit without doing a restore. Then we can run the tools to actually verify that it's not there, or look for those telltale signs of encrypted files, which once you get used to seeing them, they stand out like a sore thumb, especially if you look at the services and you see this red cross running called erasure, you know that something's not right. But you'll know what to look for if you've seen them. But if not, you can run the tools to actually look for these things. That's not viable. Okay, we go back another 2 days. Fine, we weren't compromised. So we start restoring from there. But what happens if, God forbid, this does get compromised? We've got our last line of defense, our 3211, the immutable storage, the one safes. So this is where we keep all those copies that cannot be attacked. So in a real world scenario, we would deploy a primary unit, maybe a secondary unit because it's doing some offsite backups as well, and we'll do some cross replication to have 2 copies. But we'll at least put an immutable area in place so this can't be attacked. That does not mean we can't do a tape copy. I've got customers saying to me, yep, I want all of that, but I still want a yearly copy to tape. Fine, not a problem. This is all built into the software. We don't need to do anything else. Yes, you need to buy a tape drive. We can't virtualize one of those to spit out tapes yet. That would be cool. Or we can go cloud. We've got options. But the other thing that I wanted to bring you today is more of ransomware a year or 2 years ago was scary. Yes, it's still scary today. But when I see how fast people can get their systems back when they've implemented the right solution with the right steps, with the right help from the right partner, then I don't find it as scary anymore. I look at it more of the chances I'm going to have a car accident this year. It might be a parking dent, it might be me, it could be anything. But I know that I've got tried and tested insurance, and I've done everything I can to stop it from happening. But it's inevitable at some point in your lifetime, something will happen. And it's making sure that you've got everything in place that you can do the recovery. You guys probably already know most of this, all of this. You probably know even more in some areas because it's your company you work with. But that's why we work as a partnership. This is what we specialize in. You specialize in running your company's IT and everything else. Together, hopefully, if this ever happens, those criminals, which don't drive through the front door anymore in a blue transit van, I'm not being brand descriptive there, but it can happen. It's all online now. They're hidden away somewhere. We need to protect. So, okay, so assured recovery. I'll leave this to Rick in a moment, but assured recovery solutions basically powered by ArcServe are 2 things. One, it's a software solution based on appliances with immutable storage and other things. But the assured recovery is the key technology that allows us to do automated testing. So a backup occurs, we validate it with a file system. We can also validate that backup by actually booting straight after every backup as a virtual machine. And when you think that gets even more cleverer when we only ever do one full backup and we're incremental forever. So on day 30, we're still booting the virtual machine. But by combining this technology with other technology around the full DR spectrum and the manager and the remoting, all the support we can offer, you should have a solution that literally ransomware becomes less of a worry that you're not going to get your data back. You will get your data back, and it will be within the time frame you set because that's how we've designed it with you, and you can just get on with your day-to-day job. So over to you, Ricky.
Perfect. Thanks, Kev. Yeah, so as Kev's just mentioned there, so the Assure Recovery Solutions powered by Arcserve, we've brought it together to both design and provide services in this space to kind of simplify the solutions that are already in place and to make it more of a cost-effective solution to support against things such as ransomware attacks, as well as having a secure design to protect against ransomware itself, and also for us to kind of support against ensuring that backups are carried out and the monitoring behind that kind of those kinds of things, and to ensure that organizations like yourselves are more confident in the backups that are carried out, and to ensure that you feel confident in making sure you could recover from ransomware if that day was to come. So if it is something of interest for yourselves, then feel free to type in backup into the chat window, and then one of us will be in contact with you with some further details. And in regards to our complimentary security workshop, so this would be a 2-hour consultation with one of our solutions consultants to go over the protect, detect, respond areas that we focused on earlier on in this webinar. And it was basically to assist with reducing the enterprise risk with more of a proactive strategic approach in order to secure as much as possible the organization and the impact that ransomware could cause. And it's to understand the current services that are in place and the solutions that you may already have, and maybe maximizing the tools that you've got in place or potential additional purchases that may need to be purchased in order to kind of plug in the gaps, as well as utilizing the licensing that you've got in place. So maybe if you've got E3 licensing or E5, is to just maximize the current investments in order to reduce the risks of ransomware and data protection. So if that is also something of interest, then if you would like to type in workshop into the chat window, we can book in a session for the complimentary workshop for you. So in regards to resources, so keep an eye out for the session recording. They'll be available to you after this session today, as well as the slides. It will also include any useful resources and items that we've kind of been going through today. So just noticed we don't have any questions in the chat window at the minute. Is there anything that you guys would like to ask? Okay, cool. Well, if there is anything, feel free to get in touch with us. Our contact number is on there, or we do have, and we will have the copy of this webinar on our website as well, or feel free to contact us at info@poweronplatforms.com. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, cheers guys. Take care everyone.
Thank you.